Hello, and welcome to Confidently Wrong, a show by regular dudes talking with confidence about content we have no right to speak about with any kind of authority, but do it anyway. I'm Wesley Nakamura, and as always, I'm joined by Mike Smith, award-winning director Brian Redondo, and Savon Jones, aka Captain Vani. This is episode 29, and on today's show, we take a deep dive into the first episode of Loki, and we'll bring you a first impression of a potentially revolutionary game in Ratchet and Clank, which was just released for the PS5. I'm confident that this is going to be the best show you've ever listened to, and well, hey, if it's not, you can always ask us for a refund.
I think a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for?
Science fiction.
Soundtracking? No. What do you call the music to the show?
Mm-hmm. Score?
Scoring. Yeah, scoring uses that instrument because you can get, microtonal shit out of it.
Microtonals. Sounds painful.
Frets or keys.
Did you say micro toenails?
Microtonal. All right, let's start the show.
Guys, Loki came out a couple of days ago. What a first episode. I'd call it a banger. Spoilers will be had in this episode, so if you haven't watched Loki on Disney Plus, go watch it right now and then come back to us because we're about to lay it down. Guys, did you enjoy episode 1? Were there positives in there? Were there some negatives in there? Savon, I want to get your neutral milquetoast take out of the way.
I don't know what milquetoast means, but it sounds...
It's boring and bland
milky toast
and non-committal.
Milky
Sounds
toast.
exactly what it means.
I feel like milk and
Milquetoast.
buttered toast and some milk wouldn't be a bad snack.
Oh my god, it's like you literally are a caricature of yourself.
I was just
Peak
thinking,
Savon. We're getting Peak Savon today, James.
milk and toast. How would that go? Maybe some eggs. All right, so Loki episode 1.
We're not even going to recap it. These people are watching this.
Yeah, I guess I'm just unclear on where I stand about it yet because
You don't say.
I watched the shut up, okay? I watched the trailers.
It's just funny.
I watched some of the trailers. I watched the first episode, but I guess the big thing was I wasn't sure what they were going for. Is this lighthearted? Is it a comedy? Is it a parody? Is it a drama? Like, it was hard to set my expectations going in, so I went in mad. Oh God, I'm not gonna say neutral, but I went in very just neutral. Let's see what's up.
Wait and see. You were waiting.
I feel like you've forgotten, like with all the past two shows having such distinct tones. Like, to me, this is the most traditional Marvel tone. It's like largely funny with heart, and then some like drama in there. Like that feels weird to you, because to me
weird
snapped right into movie mode.
Well, it's weird in that they're really exploring some of the way less grounded aspects of the MCU. We've never had anything like this where you have a effing office cabinet just casually filled with Infinity Stones like doodads and paper clips, and just the nature of that and having this time bureau. But I guess what I'm trying to do, and normally I don't have this issue, is suspend my disbelief of the idea of a bunch of humanoid time managers and
you need to suspend disbelief
but the fact
for
that,
the
but the
MCU.
fact
This is
that
literally a show about Marvel and video games, and
the presentation of like the time people
suspended.
as being like, I know, but I'm saying the presentation of it
of
being like a 87, that 60s old school vibe, almost dingy DMV type thing is like, I don't dislike it, but I'm still wrestling with just how I feel about that aesthetic as a whole. Because literally you could do any aesthetic because it's not grounded in anything. Actually, it's not really grounded in anything. It's just interesting that that's the vibe they went for, because it's almost WandaVision-esque. And I'm wondering if that's on purpose. They really seem to like doing for that old vintage vibe for a lot of stuff, and I'm curious.
Can we talk about how good that animated scene was?
Oh, so good.
So good, dude.
I don't know if I liked it.
I didn't like it. I mean,
to me,
they've talked about it. Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Wes.
I was just gonna say, like, the director talked about it a little bit in some of the articles, like on Hollywood Reporter and stuff, and she just mentioned that it is definitely inspired by the Jurassic Park opening, and it's
classic
I think
cartoon.
Yeah, and it was hand drawn for them. Like they did, they did it in an old school way.
Love that,
yeah,
dude.
wasn't computer generated, and just like a really cool like homage both to like Jurassic Park, which obviously is kind of a version of sci-fi, and like this idea of like messing with time right there, but also. It just served a purpose for them too, is that it just downloads a bunch of information to the audience, in just kind of a fun, loopy way to get you caught up on like what the TVA is, because most people have probably never heard of it, unless you've been like deep into the comics and stuff. So I just thought that was like a really clever way, but it didn't feel forced. I really felt like, oh, this is cool. Like Loki doesn't know either, so cool
I
for him
think
to find
that
out.
was the biggest strength of this episode in particular, was how effectively they did a shit ton of lore, like past and future stuff in 35 minutes. Like the TVA, what are the timekeepers, like how this connected to him taking the Tesseract. Like actually didn't leave confused, which after Falcon and Winter Soldier like was kind of refreshing, of like effective world building and kind of setting the tone, or setting the ground for the rest of the show.
Brian?
Yeah, they did it in an entertaining way rather than, kind of tacking it on and somebody just doing a big data dump. I mean, they sort of do that with the cartoon, but the cartoon was
It was fun.
as previously mentioned. Yeah, it was fun. It was entertaining. And I think I love the production design, that whole like DMV timekeeper aesthetic, and like waiting in line and having to take a ticket. It's really like off kilter and draws you into the world rather than going for something that is maybe more over the top and like
ethereal.
You know what it kind of reminded me of? The Umbrella Academy.
Anna was saying that through the whole episode. This is the Umbrella Academy. This is the Umbrella Academy. And the other thing that I thought is a good point of comparison is the show Maniac on Netflix with Jonah Hill and Emma Stone. Great show. Also really kind of off the wall, weird sort of organization and laboratory type setting. And that sort of thing I think speaks to the tone of the show. It's like, well, there's this weird stuff happening in the MCU related to time and multiverses. But here, let's dress it up in a fun way so that we don't take ourselves too seriously, and you can go along for the ride with Loki.
I have a thought and a question. The thought is that it's like so clear that this, I don't know if it's just this phase or if it's like the next 3 phases, but everything is doing multiverse. Which, like, I think is pretty cool. Like, Wanda obviously is, Spider-Man obviously is, and now seems like they're doing kind of like the what would you call it, the housekeeping almost of like having to like lay the foundation for the multiverse stuff to come. So
definitely,
I'm still excited about that. I'm more excited about it now because it seems like they have a very clear idea of how those rules will function in the MCU, and I think like, if Loki can do a good job of not only telling an interesting story, but also, get out of here. And Brian, you want to trade Anna's?
What's up, Anna?
Hey man, I'm not into that.
Yeah, friend of the show, Anna Guno.
You know?
I had such a good thought, Anna, and now you just robbed me of it.
He didn't.
Jesus
it
Christ.
wasn't. Don't worry, Anna. It wasn't
Oh
going
no!
anywhere.
If they can tell
Can we get the mic
if
variant
they can
to come
tell
in?
an entertaining story while also like kind of like setting up the multiverse stuff to come, I think the show will be a success. My question is, how did y'all feel about Owen Wilson?
I can't stop looking at his nose.
What's up with it?
I think it got
was
worse.
Is that his actual face, or is that just oh, for real?
Can we write him a fan letter?
No, that's his actual nose.
It's funny. I didn't enjoy a lot of the animation DMV type stuff. I was like waiting for that to be done. Like the whole him being processed. I was like, can we like get to the meat and potatoes it is?
Oh, I thought that was so important.
I just don't think I like the aesthetic, and like it's not bad, but it's just not for me. I love Owen Wilson.
watching this, like, I had the thought, like, I can't imagine anyone else playing this role. Like, having seen the way he does it, it just works so well, especially opposite Tom Hiddleston, who I guess we should also talk about because he gave a fantastic performance on multiple different kind of tones throughout that episode, but they play so well against each other.
Huge high point. Love that.
I could see other people doing it, but yeah, I mean, I think he did a phenomenal job with it. I thought Savon is saying like, oh, I didn't really enjoy kind of that opening scene or the opening, sequences, but I thought that was so important for setting up how the TVA functions, right? They're obviously going to play a big role in this. And I think you can see, right, like where in some ways the institution is broken, right? Just like you're talking about DMV references there. And you're getting to see it without having them tell you it, right? So a lot of this is all show, don't tell. They threw in like these bots. There's some funny jokes. The aesthetic, I think, is kind of interesting as a choice because this organization or whatever it is, right, is about maintaining this like timeline, and they're all seeing and they exist at all times at all times. But their decor is stuck in this like time that we think of as very old and very outdated. And right, that says something about their organization, right? They are not up to date. They are in some ways not with it.
Well, they're kind of all times, right?
They're of all times?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
right?
But what I'm saying is like they should be, right? And so you would expect that they would be maybe a timeless classic aesthetic look to them. But because of there's something inside them that is not like keeping up with it, right? Like this, it's symbolic. I think it's symbolic.
You're saying the vintage presentation and style is an allegory for like, hey, they're supposed to be time people keeping it up, but they're actually ironically stuck in a specific phase and style. I can agree with that.
Yeah, and I think
that's
a specific choice. I think they made that choice on purpose. But also it just looks cool, right? Like
like a bureaucratic DMV. Oh, this is just inefficient, not up to date. Y'all never got with the time.
But if you go to a DMV, it's very non-characteristic now,
awful.
Right? They're very just bland and boring. You wouldn't say this is bland and boring, right? There is a clear choice. These bright oranges and these colors that they're using. It's very interesting to look at. It's from a time period that we as Americans associate with 50 years ago.
It's also very Men in Black now that I think about it.
Yeah.
And I kind of disagree with you about it being like a purposeful allegory. I think more so than anything else, it's just meant to evoke bureaucracy. Like they are just functionaries. This is their job. They're just trying to keep things in order. And we know as an audience, like things are going to get chaotic, basically. And that's why Loki is there. But I did have a question about that. Like at the end of the animation that explains how time variants work and whatnot, they say that if variants go off their timeline, it can result in multiverse battles or danger, multiverse war. Yeah. But I felt like they didn't really explain that part of it. So what do you think they're implying?
So I might have an answer for that. So, and Mike, you kind of said this earlier about multiverse. Multiverse is becoming a bigger deal in more mainstream media because comics are like prominent enough to where they can get the creative freedom to really dive into it. Even DC, they've been doing multiverse stuff since the 60s and 70s. This isn't exactly a new thing.
Wait, when you say prominent in mainstream media, do you mean like movies and TV shows or just in general?
Movies and TV shows. I think it's because Marvel movies have become so successful that they get to really experiment with multiverse theory. You weren't going to have a 90s superhero movie just go for that. It's really ambitious. So, but the comics, they've been doing that since the 70s, literally where they have multiverse level conflicts in order to consolidate the ridiculous amount of storylines and timelines they have.
And they were all on LSD at that time, so,
So they could imagine all the timelines at once.
Yeah. I'm in multiple timelines.
Yeah, actually, though, but there's a huge Marvel event that basically happens where it's basically the apocalypse for multiple actual, like, universe. Like, the main Marvel universe
is that
called
Secret
the 616. War? No, not
Secret War is the Krell,
the Skrull invasion. No,
Skrull.
This is like a different storylines, different version, like the Ultimates universe, the regular mainstream. It's like completely different timelines. It's a way of them having like it's basically a multiverse conflict with characters from different realities, different versions of Doom, the Fantastic Four, like all the Thanos, all the heavy hitters going at it, and it ends with the universe being recreated. It's really out there, fun to read though. But my point is that was literally them having a multiverse level war and conflict because there were so many realities that was causing problems. So I don't know if that's just a wink nudge at the thing, but maybe that's their just way of saying, this is why you can't have excessive time travel stuff, because in the comics, at least it is conflict. If you read the comics, maybe you've heard of it, but I thought it was cool. A wink nudge to that. But even DC's done it. They've reset their timeline so many times by having multiverse conflicts to kind of just, we need to tidy up the writing and all these different versions of characters.
Well, it makes excessive. So like for them, I one of the things I'm taking away from what you just said is in order to pull off the multiverse, it's an incredibly ambitious thing. And it's like, and it seems like if a good way to, get people to that point is, 50 million different TV shows that all touch on the multiverse and then movies and stuff like that.
I mean, I think Endgame sets us up for that though. Right, this idea of like different actions.
But that's not multi.
Timelines,
I know, but that's not multiverse. That's like, well, that.
No, it
part,
is.
But
these things are running in parallel, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that is multiverse in that.
So
I
think they're building on that in a much deeper way now. We're getting to see like how that works. But I think overall, I still dislike timeline stories or just anything with time travel. I feel like it just sort of opens up cans of worms that
time travel
can't always solve.
Typically not multiverse though. Time travel and most things we can agree, right, is just going back and forth in what we would call one timeline.
Yeah, the multiverse thing.
I'm looking at you, Tenet.
To work with.
Yeah.
And also like that by nature, you're not introducing new characters because you're staying. It's almost always those stories are now the same version of characters at different times. I think what they're going to be able to do now is bring in, like Savon was saying, like all these crazy other characters.
Yeah.
We'll see the other versions of Spider-Man in that movie probably. So it is different in that way. And I think I prefer it. And I also am kind of sick of time traveling as a whole. But I think I don't know if I call this time traveling.
The Arrowverse does stuff like that, right? Like Supergirl doesn't actually live in the same universe as Flash and Arrow. And they have to cross over when they do their big crossover events. They actually have to somehow.
The DC TV shows actually don't exist. I don't know if you've heard.
They're not canon.
They're not in my timeline.
One positive thing I want to say, because I was ragging on like the aesthetic of the time place, which by the way, if it's not an allegory, that makes me dislike it more. So what I really want to talk about how much I loved. So my biggest concern about the show was, this is my
Loki,
biggest
right?
red flag. Yeah, the biggest thing was Loki. It's this
okay. I was going to ask you about this.
Y'all giving him back. Y'all giving us a version of him before he got literally any of his character development.
Yeah,
right.
Like he has gotten no meaningful development. He's still a huge butt, and I'm still deciding.
So what'd you think? I was going to ask you about this. Did you think they did
them
it?
doing like the reel of his life and all that and showing
was
bro,
so
like,
good. So good.
It was good,
and that's gonna change him as a character.
Like it was such an emotionally charged scene that it made sense that he would grow as a person.
Let him talk.
No, I agree. I agree with all that.
Okay, all right.
My concern is I'm still deciding if I buy it, because that still was just like the equivalent of a few hours. Like if someone just now showed me in like an hour or two the rest of my life and how it ends, would I be very fundamentally different than I was now? Probably. But would I still be anything like the person at the end when I died? I just don't think so. Like, but I feel like it cheapens it a little bit, because I'm like, you can't just watch your dad saying you love you, your brother saying he loves you, and then you dying, and then suddenly that makes up for all those movies of character development that you get to see happen live. And I get what they're going for. I don't think I'm against it, but it still feels like this version that we get of Loki is still a distinctly different character from the one who died in the movies, and I'm kind of just don't know how I feel about that.
What's always been true about Loki throughout all that character development is that he's always had that seed of heart, and I don't know. I think he's always been something of a conflicted character, particularly when it comes to him and his brother and the rest of his family. So
agreed.
I think though that element is present in the version of Loki that we're seeing now, and seeing his whole life flash before his eyes in the way that it was, it's going to exacerbate that seed that already exists in that character. But I definitely agree with you that multiverses and stuff, like even the way that you describe them in terms of the comics, it's really just a convenient way to tie up loose ends. And I hope they don't cheat us that way and that they do it more thoughtfully. But I give them a lot of leeway at this point.
Here's why I actually meant to say this earlier, and I think when I was texting Savon about this, like, it's not just that they did a good job of moving the story forward and like catching everybody up in 30 minutes in a good way. I actually think they did a really good job of I think there are a lot of different ways that trying to catch Loki up in terms of his character development could have gone wrong. And I don't think you can do it effectively in any other way, because the whole, like, most of their one-on-one interaction was him asking that question, do you enjoy hurting people, which was a great scene, great development. I mean, great acting from both of them. Loved it. Built up in a really meaningful way. So Loki, I think, obviously knew that there was that good inside of him. That just took a lot of movies to get to that point. But because what's the actor? What's the character's name?
Mobius.
Is it Mobius?
Yeah. Agent Mobius.
Oh, like Mobius strip?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
He knew it was in there because he can see where Loki gets to. So because he was able to push Loki in this obviously traumatic time for him, like that, and on top of that, like, not just pushing him in terms of their conversation and like continually getting him to get to the point that he doesn't enjoy hurting people, but also letting him see what actually happens. Like, that kind of makes sense in an organic way that Loki would kind of have like a moment there, on top of like, he probably feels like his life is essentially over because he knows they can kill him at any time. So he doesn't have his power anymore. He is...
Wait, about that. One of the the times I laughed the hardest was him trying to summon the knives in the courtroom, and he's just like flexing his chest. Oh my god, I was dying. It was so good, and he just like committed to it like
the gym
3 times in a row.
And that's another weird thing, and this can be the last thing. So it's like the character development has, obviously taken a step back, and like Loki is now like the bad Loki again, but the actual tone of the character is exactly the same, which is kind of weird. Like, you compare the Loki at the beginning of this episode to the Loki in the Avengers, and it's two completely different characters, right? Even though thematically they should be the same, like they're at the same point, but the way they play the character now is so much more comedic. So I thought
Marvel's learned a lot.
Well, he's so less powerful. He's so much less powerful. Like it's kind of, it's just one of those. It's just really a good way of showing, hey, you're outclassed here, bro. Like,
and then like, but to bring it back, like, because he realizes he's outclassed, like, doesn't that make him more vulnerable and more likely to kind of have this breakdown where he realizes he isn't a bad person? So it's like, it is hard to do character development and fast forward, but I think this was the only way. This was the most effective way to do it, I would argue.
I want a gif of him when he got the stones and saw him and was like, oh, this is just a thing full of time stones. Oh, bet.
Wait, does that mean that the TVA is like super powerful and can control Infinity Stones, or does that mean that like
they transcend
this different reality?
I think they exist outside of that.
Yeah. Okay, so that's how I
exist outside
it.
of the universes where those things have power.
I read, because the neckbeards are really upset about that. I think people that aren't like well referenced in the comics like feel like just like throwing Infinity Stones there is like, oh well, this was 10 years of Marvel movies that you've essentially just thrown out the door, like kind of like Luke throwing the lightsaber. And
it does feel like that a little bit to me too.
But here's the thing, in the comics the lore is that the Infinity Stones don't work outside of their universe. And they have shown, like, they made a point in, I don't know what the comic was, and if this show is based on that comic. I just saw a few panels of it, but like Loki's like in like a cave, and there's just hundreds of Infinity Stones everywhere. So I think like it's also like, subverting kind of expectations and like what the rules of the world building are, and if you can do that in an effective way that connects to the character development at the time, then like what better way to move on from the Infinity Saga than showing that it's all kind of pointless.
Reminds me of Matrix 2.
No, that's the thing. It's the futility of it, and like that's the only way you can.
But we've seen that they're not pointless. I mean, you can't be like, oh, they're pointless.
But in the
context of
these
characters,
what this show is trying. what they're tasked with now is they had 10 years of building up to essentially like a galaxy defying event, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah.
now it's
No, I
like,
know what they're trying to do.
how do we raise the stakes? And the only way to do that is being like, oh, well, that actually in the grand scheme of things isn't, that significant. And a really good way to do that early on, which also connects with what I'm saying in terms of setting up the multiverse. Like, that was almost just like saying goodbye to the last saga of just being like, okay, the stakes are way higher now. The Infinity Stones don't really matter as much.
Yeah, I wonder if it's higher
phase 2
or
has
if
different
it's
rules.
different.
I think different. I think different more than higher. I think is a better way. I still agree though that it's a good way of like showing that the Infinity Stones aren't the only ultimate power in the universe or high power. It doesn't mean they're irrelevant, better, worse, but like context. In the context of these people, hey, Loki, whatever you about to do, it's not happening.
Hey, so can we talk a little bit about Mobius's case that he needs Loki's help on? He reveals at the end of the episode that he's actually chasing another Loki.
Yeah.
Who's killing people across time, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Well, also trying to like erase certain versions of it, maybe because he's stealing those bombs, those time bombs.
The ones that they seem to use pretty recklessly or pretty casually. There was several points where they were like lazy cops was that's too much work. Just reset it.
Very Men in Black.
Yeah.
I think it's
that
She-Loki.
bureaucracy, right?
I think
You think
because
so?
they made a point to not show the face. I think this is gonna be the first. I'm actually calling it now, and we're gonna do another episode, and I'm gonna be right. I think this is gonna be the first example of like other universe version of the character, because we thought we got that in Wanda, remember, with the X-Men guy, and we kind of did her brother or whatever.
Yeah.
I think this is gonna, and they teased us there the same way they teased us in Spider-Man. I think this is going to be the first actual like multiverse version, and I think it'll be She-Loki.
Yeah,
Calling it now.
I've been watching some YouTube.
Can we not say She-Loki? Because
what's the character called?
Loki.
It's just Loki.
Yeah,
right?
in the comic, there's an extended period of time where Loki's
She-Hulk?
just a woman. Yeah, but She-Hulk's a different person. She-Hulk is literally
different
Bruce
character.
Banner's cousin.
Yeah.
But there's a whole extended run where Loki's
okay.
just a woman, and it's just like you're still Loki. It's just Loki is a woman.
Yeah.
Okay, well, excuse the name.
Compared to like Lady Thor, which is actually a different person.
But isn't there a Thor who is a lady?
Yes, a different person. That's
But that's just
Jane
Thor.
But that's
Foster.
not Lady
Oh.
Thor. She's just Thor.
Yeah, but
No.
she assumes the mantle of Thor. It's a title. It becomes a title.
That's
Okay.
different. Yeah.
Interesting.
I feel
Yeah,
like from
they're
a
different
practical
people.
standpoint, and the MCU is running into this point or this problem where all their actors are just going to age out of these characters, so they need to find a convenient way to replace them. So they're doing it with the multiverse. They're doing it with Sam Wilson taking on the mantle. Lots of different things.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, but that's a comics thing.
We're gonna see.
Yeah.
We're gonna see variations of a lot of characters that we've known for a decade, and they're gonna start to look different.
I mean, they've also confirmed Young Avengers, so it's also going to be these
Yeah.
characters' proteges.
So your boy from Falcon Winter Soldier is going to definitely pop back up.
and what's her
Who?
name?
Oh,
Elijah.
the one Isaiah Bradley's son.
Yeah.
or, grandson.
Eli, he's Patriot. Yeah, he's Patriot. Probably Kamala Khan on the Miss Marvel show. Yeah.
And Hawkeye's daughter. or whatever.
Kate
Yeah.
Bishop. I don't think it's his
Yeah.
daughter, but protege.
But
Protege.
she's gonna be
Yeah.
be in his show.
Yeah, but Marvel's always been known for doing like the mantle passing characters. So like, if this is a natural progression of the movies, it really just shows how prominent the movies have begun to where you even get to be in that territory, which I think is a good thing because
It's
she
pretty
tells some
special.
cool, fun stories.
Going back to what Brian was asking about in terms of the things, I don't have a prediction. I think the YouTube video, Talking Heads did seem to hint that maybe it's going to be the Loki, the girl version of Loki or woman version of Loki. But I think it was New Rockstars, they pointed out that by showing Loki his future and knowing that if he commits to returning back to his timeline or like establishing the sacred timeline as the one, he ensures that he's going to die a pretty painful death. He's going to ensure that his mom dies, and he's going to ensure that his dad dies. And so Owen Wilson needing his help is now putting himself in a pickle, right? By saying like, I need your help, but if you help me, like your entire family's going to die. right? Or everyone you loved and yourself are gonna die, and that makes Loki a lot less likely.
To plan.
Yeah, that makes Loki a lot less willing to help, right? And of course, we know Loki's pretty selfish. He wants, he's out for himself most of the time, and so they created this like weird bit of tension in which getting Loki's help and breaking him down and telling him like, there's good in you, also means that Loki is now like, wait a second, if I help you, this is gonna mean the end of me in a very short order. So I like that New Rockstars pointed that out, and I want to see where they go with that.
So if the TVA and the Timekeepers were basketball fans, they'd be Sixers fans, right? Trust the process.
Exactly.
They'd be more like old school Knicks fans in terms of just
let's not do it.
Reputation and complacency and stagnation.
We're not doing this. Cue outro music.
Who's Loki in this? He's just out for himself. He would be
literally James Dolan. He's destined with the task of ruling in greatness. But
Am I correct that all three of you are pretty excited about where the show's gonna go?
Mm-hmm.
Are any of you like
Savon's tepid?
Savon's
tepid.
I'm cautiously curious. I just have questions, and I'm curious to see how they're gonna answer them. But I don't dislike it, and I think the Loki acting is great, which is what I'm excited about. We'll see about how they do the whole story.
Okay,
I feel like the top to bottom, like the quality of all the different elements of the show,
than either of them.
Yeah,
by far
the best of the shows so far.
I 100% agree with that. I think this one has been a step up. I'm loving it. I love everything that you're doing so far. We'll see if that continues or if I get frustrated that they haven't answered all my questions by next episode.
I have to wait a week to see what happens.
It's the worst,
There's only 6 episodes?
I'm trying my best to not fall into that. I'm like, all right, Savon, be patient. Episode 1. Let's see what they do.
Excellent.
You're turning into Wes. Love it.
Rubbing off on him. This week on Thursday, Ratchet and Clank was released for the PS5. Maybe one of the first really kind of generation pushing, envelope pushing games for the PS5 that's been hyped. Mike bought it. Me and Savon are still working on Breath of the Wild, so neither of us have got it, and Savon is not a hype beast anyway, so he wasn't going to get it right away.
Savon is working on like 5 different games. Let's be clear.
I'm still working on getting a PS5.
I'm really guys, I'm really loving Breath of the Wild right now. Like I keep trying to get to the 4th divine beast, and I keep getting caught. I keep getting caught in these side quests that I come across, and I'm like, I guess I got to do this now.
That's what it's about, man.
And then I'm like, well, now I got to go get more durians because I got to get more health. So now I got to go over here. And then I'm like, wait, part of this.
I love this growth for you. Like, is Breath of the Wild going to be a part of your Hot Boy summer journey? Like, let's go.
Part of the map is still not viewable for me yet. Like I haven't unlocked it via the towers, and I'm like, can I really get to the 4th divine beast without unlocking all of the map? That's kind of a shame. Like,
I love this.
I mean, I totally could, right? You can actually just go to the divine beast. Where it is.
Because
you can go straight to Ganon, man.
You can you could beat Ganon with a stick.
Did somebody go straight to Ganon?
Yeah, beat him with a stick.
That's crazy.
The stick, man.
There's no way, man. I'm still dying to the Lionels. Those guys.
I didn't even fight them. I just
run.
I've beaten 2 of them so far. 2 of them, and it's tough, man.
Look, I love this for you. But
anyways,
Ratchet and Clank.
Tell us how it is, Mike. I'm gonna time you. Can you tell us about it in 3 minutes without any spoilers and just giving us the hype about it?
Yeah, it does everything it was hyped up to do. The graphics are crazy, cutscenes and in-game. The combat is really fun.
Which
really
mode
intuitive.
are you playing on?
Performance ray tracing, which is also in the Insomniac Spider-Man games.
It's like half resolution, but full.
Yeah,
full frames per second.
It's 60 frames per second with some ray tracing elements, and then I think 1080p or
the God rays.
I don't know what the reference that was, but
nothing. It's just tech people.
It's
the puddles. $1,000, and now I can see my reflection in this raindrop.
It's funny because you're the only one with the PC here.
Right? And I'm looking at my PC.
Yeah. No, it's cool, man. I haven't done there are some aspects of the game that are clearly only possible because of the PS5 hardware. Like there's a ton of stuff on screen. Like when you're in a city, like there are a ton of cars. There is one of the main traversal things is like going through portals, and the way they do that is genuinely trippy because it just hasn't happened in games before because the hardware hasn't enabled it. Like portaling and just having the world instantly load is really weird to my brain because it's not something you've ever got to do interactively. So that I highly recommend.
If you turn around and look back through the portal,
it's solely movement. So it's like you see it and you can like tap on that and then your character like
goes
comes
through it, right?
there.
But if you did a 180, is the portal behind you?
You can't see through it. Yeah, be in the same. They're in the same spot. It's like a
Rick and Morty portal gun.
Yeah, it's almost like, think about like Uncharted. It's like, oh, I can like, hit my grappling hook over there. But instead of that, it's I can instantly teleport over there.
Right. So my question is, when you go through the portal into the next
you can
world,
turn around.
Can you turn around and
there.
jump right back?
See the remnants of the other world.
You can see the other one. It's like jump points essentially. So it's like cool for combat because like if you're fighting a boss that's shooting a ton of stuff at you, I can just teleport over there, shoot him a bunch, get his attention, teleport back.
Oh,
it is
so
genuinely
cool.
It is genuinely weird. It is genuinely weird because I'm telling you, like, your brain doesn't process like being in that new area like that because you're so used to like the schema of video games of like it has to load and I have to get over there. So being able to do that instantly is really weird. There were a few cutscenes, like one that's in all the trailers that they use to demonstrate like, oh, we can instantly load new environments. Like the first time that happened was also really weird, but more kind of understandable because it's a cutscene. It's not something you're doing interactively. Honorable mention, and this will be the last thing I will say, and it's something that I think is underrated about the PS5 generation and wasn't something people were talking about. The haptics in the controller, it's just constant. Like even in cutscenes, it makes cutscenes better. Like I find myself holding because I'm used to putting my controller down during a cutscene. You hold it because the things that are happening on screen are replicated in the controller. And they use it in genuinely, interesting ways with the combat. So each gun essentially uses the triggers in a different way. So like the first gun you get, you can hold it down halfway and it just shoots at a slow rate. You can pull it down, it shoots at a fast rate. The shotgun, you can pull it down halfway to shoot one barrel. You can pull it down fully to shoot double. So it's just like all those different things that just comes together to really feel like a next-gen game, which is such a cliche at this point. It's like, oh, it really feels like a next-gen game, or you really feel like Spider-Man, But they did everything they said they were going to do, so everybody should play it. It's not a long game. It's like a 10-hour-ish game, but it's just so worth it. It's so cool, and I'm excited to keep playing.
Is the story cool?
Yeah, the story's really good, and the last one they put out was like a game about the movie, which is a movie about a game. So the comedy kind of fell flat through all those filters, essentially. But this one is just like a true like next step in the story, and it's really good, and it's really funny too. The comedy's really good.
Cool, Brian.
So like with the haptics and the different trigger sensitivities, do they set you up that you have to figure out like which one to use? And
no, it tells you. It says like half push for this, full push for that. It's very much in like the game design and weapon design.
But like the boss battles or the enemies, like they require a certain type of shotgun blast versus a different one, or you're trying to like conserve.
It's very much like your personal feel. Like the game has a shit ton of weapons. That's always been a part of Ratchet and Clank, but now it's like each weapon essentially has a few different modes. So maybe they'll get to a point where it's like you have to use this part, this aspect of this weapon, but I don't think that's really like their MO. It's more so just like you got to go beat this thing. You have all these different weapons, and then you can also they have a pretty robust. Yeah, they have a pretty robust upgrade system, and that also impacts it what the triggers will do. If you upgrade a gun to a certain point, then maybe the trigger will function differently, which is also so cool, right? Like the actual hardware works differently as you're progressing the weapon. It's so cool.
Question, this is my question. So I didn't play Ratchet and Clank growing up, but I've played those kinds of like
me neither
Sony platformer, especially like that 90s anthropomorphic animal, Spyro.
Oh, can I say something about that before you finish, just because it's really cool?
What, the word anthropomorphic?
No, like Spyro and whatnot. There's because it's the multiverse. There's a weapon where you open a portal and it brings in shit from other PlayStation games. So you can bring in like a Thunderjaw from HCD.
That's so cool.
You can open one and Sly Cooper comes through.
Oh, I love
Dang,
Sly
I can't
Cooper.
even yell spoilers because I said I wouldn't play this game for eons. That's
No, that's like and that's not.
In the
That's
that's
I haven't.
sick.
That's so cool, right?
That's sick. So okay, so this is my question. A lot of those games, that was a genre from 20, 25 years ago. And sometimes I feel like those games fell out of prominence because they ultimately became really dated, where when it's all said and done, it's a platformer, you have some basic moves you can do. I know Ratchet and Clank was better because they had the best weapons, even the older games, but I feel like sometimes this style of platformer, cartoony action game just, like, maybe that's a stagnant genre. Do you feel like this game, in terms of just the gameplay, the mechanics, it seems like the Portal stuff is obviously next top tier stuff. Does it feel dated, like you're playing an older game, but with amazing? You get the question.
No, yeah, but you how many first person shooters do you play? A lot, and how much has that changed over time? You know, like at a certain point, a platformer.
Yeah, but I stopped playing shooters because I stopped playing shooters that weren't multiplayer for that exact reason.
True,
like multiplayer is the only reason I entertain any shooters, if that, you know. So like that's kind of my point of I stopped playing COD and all that because I was like, what can you do to make this fresh and different?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it's a good question. I guess what I'll say is like a platformer will always be a platformer, right? You're always jumping up, but it's what you have around that, you know? So it's when the graphics are beautiful, the combat is fun and engaging. You don't mind like the normal like it's always going to be the same forever. It's jump up here, or there's two walls and you do a wall jump to get up there, or you hit on a thing. But it's also like they have particularly done that so well over time that I don't think it feels flat.
Who's they? Insomniac?
Yeah.
Okay. No,
cool.
That's just a real question. I just,
No, it's a good question. What I'll say is that if they didn't do everything else so well, it might feel flat, but I never even really consider that. Like, is the main gameplay loop boring? It's not.
Yeah, like the new Modern Warfare, beautiful graphics. The campaign's fun to play, beautiful graphics. It doesn't introduce anything new to the shooter genre at all outside of great visual production value, which I like, but I don't want to play a game that's not fun to play through multiple times. And I've never found myself compelled to play like a COD campaign more than once compared to like Halo.
It's kind of like that quote, like whatever, like there's only two stories, you know, in all of fiction. It's also like there's only like 5 genres in video games, and it's just what we're gonna get.
Oh my god, this is a delayed troll.
Like
and I just
Tchaikovsky or something.
Tolstoy.
Is that Karl Marx?
Look, you have open world, you have platformer, you have sports game,
shooter.
you have first person shooter, you have like linear action adventure game. That's it. That's
the
just all
Infinity
your
games. And put them into the Infinity console, and you will. All right, bet.
All right, well, that'll take us out. Thanks, Mike, for your first impressions. I actually do think that'll be probably my next game once I'm get through Breath of the Wild here in the next few days. I really want to spend.
One
that
does
up
not
see.
get through Breath of the Wild.
It does when you're on trying to get the Switch back to BK. I'm really trying to get. I've been hogging it for almost a month. I feel kind of bad.
Shout out friend of the show. BK,
Hey BK, you're
have this journey.
Yeah, man, it's been great. I really appreciate it. All right, so that'll take us out. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram @confidently_pod. This has been fun. I'm really looking forward to where they go with Loki in the next few weeks, and checking out that Ratchet and Clank. We're out. Do you guys have questions for him?
For Mike?
Yeah, about Ratchet and Clank.
It's like, why are you balding so fast, bro?
Oh.
Do you want us to ask you about all your insecurities, Mike?
Mike has none. Confident all the
I
time.
hear you have small feet. Tell us about that.
No, that's the one thing I've really said. Have you ever heard that John Mulaney bit? And he's talking about like, he's like, you know, I'm not really scared of anybody except adolescent kids because everyone else will be mean to you, but they'll be mean to you in a very specific way. So I was walking down the street and a gang of 14-year-old boys were like, wow, look at him. He has really feminine hips. And I was like, no, That's the one thing I'm really sensitive about.